Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this edition of 30 on Thursdays, Suskutech's bi-weekly webinar series on anything and everything to do with SharePoint. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into today's topic. Again, as I mentioned, this is a bi-weekly series that we do, 30 minutes in length. We've been doing it about 2 years now. Our next one is coming up 2 weeks from today on May 16th, and that'll talk about the new geolocation features in SharePoint 2013, and Danny Jesse's going to walk us through that. And you can get the full schedule of all of our upcoming 30 on Thursdays at suskutech.com/webinars. Like sessions in the past, today's session will be recorded and available on our website probably within the next 24 hours. You can get the complete archive of past sessions at suskutech.com, archive webinars. So if you need to duck out early, just know it'll be available on our website. Questions, we typically save questions to the end, but you can use the question window located typically on the right-hand side of your screen in GoToWebinar and kind of file those in as we go, and then I'll read through them at the end once we're done with the topic. A couple things we want to talk about a little bit. We have some upcoming, more formalized training. We have a Nintex 2-day class that's all online coming up next week, May 8th and 9th. As well as we do once a month, we do a 3-hour webinar training, and this one will be on PowerShell and SharePoint 2010. So if you've dabbled in PowerShell before, or you've run PowerShell scripts but weren't quite sure what it was all about, this is a good crash course in learning PowerShell for SharePoint 2010, and really the principles apply to 2013 as well. And you can get all that information at our website as well, suskutech.com/online classes. As well as all the ones of the similar format, 3 hours that we've done in the past are all out there available for sale as well. And another educational event that we do, Dawn, who's our speaker today, is going to be speaking, I believe, at the SharePointConference.org. This is our 6th year running this conference. It's a SharePoint conference in the DC area. It's coming up in June 13th and 14th. Love to see everybody there. We have a coupon code available. If you haven't registered yet, you can go ahead and register with that coupon code and save 15% off your registration. So with that, we're going to jump into today's topic, which is a great topic. It's metadata, the quest for the holy grail of business value. Again, our presenter today is Don Miller from Concept Searching. I'm Steve Witt. I will be the moderator for today's session. And if you have any questions, I'll be available through the chat window as well as on the in the question window as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn it over to Dawn.
Thanks, Steve. Hello, everyone. Okay, so first thing, we are showing the presentation, and Steve, can you just confirm that we see the first slide, which shows the quest for the holy grail of business value?
Yep, looks great. Now I see your agenda.
Excellent. So again, I will be a presenter at the SharePoint conference. Actually, my first time this year attending this session, I should say this conference, and presenting at a session. I'm extremely excited. And we will be talking about, of course, my love, which is metadata and taxonomy development. So if we don't get a chance to chat today, hopefully we'll see you at the conference in about a month. Today we'll be talking about the Smart Content Metadata framework. Really, I'm talking about metadata. And what is metadata? Metadata is data about data. So if you have a document, it's not the document. It's that the document is a document of record. That tag that says it's a document of record, that is metadata. The item that describes a TV, how much it costs, the screen size, the manufacturer, that's all metadata. It's data about data. And so what we're going to be talking about today is how that metadata applies business value and where to find it in your organization, and more importantly, how with the Smart Content Metadata framework, we automate the entire process of tagging content for real business value. We'll talk about a couple different similar scenarios today in different ways that we're providing value for current customers, and of course, provide a demonstration about our solution, which is Taxonomy Manager and Concept Classifier. From a customer perspective, we have a plethora of customers, from your small 100-person companies all the way up to the Fortune 100. We are Microsoft's go-to partner as it relates to automating the process of applying metadata and taxonomy management. And that's because besides having a turnkey solution that's integrated with SharePoint 2007, 2010, and 2013, it's actually a native integration. And that just means that there's no custom code that you have to add in order to make our solution work. And really, the building blocks of that solution are what we call Taxonomy Manager, Concept Classifier, Concept Searching, Taxonomy Workflow, and Content Type Updater. And what that does is provide us a platform to align metadata with your enterprise. So not only can we provide metadata to SharePoint, but really to every other application across the enterprise. And more importantly, because we're doing it consistently, that means that the metadata itself will be transparent. And if the metadata is transparent, then we can align it with our governance requirements, as well as any other specific requirement that we need to do, that we need to leverage across our company. So again, what is it are we doing? We're automating the process of applying metadata and reducing end users having to tag. The problem with end users tagging is that they tag subjectively. With our solution, we align it and make it consistent, which means it can be transparent and, again, aligned with governance. That means, from a findability perspective, we're going to get faster access to the right information, and we'll be able to reuse the content. With good metadata, we can also migrate the content from one location to another. And then lastly, that means the metadata within a SharePoint perspective can be used to target content. Now, how do we do this? Again, consistency and applying metadata in an automated fashion to align with your record retention code policies, sensitive information removal like PHI, PII, and governance requirements, improving content findability, and of course, targeting content for both displaying it as well as for migration for your end users. Again, as a platform, we focus on SharePoint, but we have to work with everything. So that means the metadata can be leveraged not only with Microsoft SharePoint Search, Fast Search, and the new 2013 Search, but really any search platform, whether it's Solr, whether it's Google, whether it's a Thunderstorm box, or if it's an enterprise application like Documentum, Oracle, or SQL. Again, with the Smart Content Framework, it gives you a platform for applying metadata consistently throughout the organization. And the 4 key takeaways are, again, the metadata will improve findability, align with governance, allow you to take action and move the content, and then allow you to target the content to specific users. And yes, I do know I'm going fast, but that's so that we can get through as much as possible today and really show the product from a demonstration perspective. If you guys go to marketresearch.com right now, you'll see our solution in action. And what happens is every night we read their entire infrastructure, apply the metadata, and add that metadata to their FAST platform. As you'll see on their site, it allows you to quickly filter and navigate to the appropriate item you're looking for. As far as large sites, we work with the U.S. Air Force. They have over 6 petabytes of information, and we're actually helping them migrate from a Stellar Oracle platform to the SharePoint platform. They have a very large taxonomy with over 30,000 nodes, but more importantly, we have over 5,000 retention codes that we have to review for each specific document and apply to the document so that we align the policy with the type of document that they're working with. If we go completely away from the Microsoft and SharePoint stack, we could talk about IDC Research, where with their Solr search platform, we add metadata as the content's being authored, and then of course it gets displayed on the idcresearch.com site. Very analogous to marketresearch.com, except they have no SharePoint and no Microsoft platform. It's all done on Solr. And then lastly, PHP Bulletin, which leverages the metadata to align with their SharePoint Record Center. And again, the whole key here being is that we automate the process of applying metadata because we do it consistently. We know that the metadata is accurate and can be aligned with transparency. And when we have transparency, we can align it with our governance policies. Now, why would a regular metadata approach fail? Well, that's because with having an end user apply the metadata values, it's not that we think that they can do it. We know they can do it, but the problem is that even if Steve and I have the same document and the same taxonomies, we've done focus groups, and we know that they're going to be inconsistent. The real problem is if I just give the document to Steve at the morning at 8 a.m. and say, Steve, tag this document with the appropriate metadata values, and then I compare that to the same document with the same taxonomy at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We've done enough focus groups where we know that An end user by himself can't even tag the document in the morning the way that he can in the afternoon. And that's the true problem. And again, that's the problem that we solve. We take away that behavior modification, which is getting a person to tag, and automate the entire process. How do we do it? We have a unique approach. We use what's known as the ability to extract out multi-word concepts from your content. Because it's coming from your content, we know that the metadata terms and the values that we extract out are correct. The example that we always use, if I said the word triple, we all might think of baseball. If I said heart, we might think of love. And if I said bypass, we might think of freeway. But if I said triple heart bypass, we all know that we're talking about open heart surgery. So with our product, we point our indexer at your content. It extracts out those multi-word concepts. And from those multi-word concepts, that underpins everything that we're going to do going forward. Now, we will use that to build out the taxonomies, model them, validate them, make sure that they work correct. And then once we know that they work correct, that's when we'll actually begin the automated tagging process. Again, if it's in SharePoint, it's a native integration. If it's any other application, we leverage our web service and XML API. It will dramatically improve search, allow you to align content with workflow and migration paths, validate records management and sensitive information removal processes, and ultimately allow you to align with the lifecycle of your content. Again, with this approach, we're leveraging a statistical approach, and that's how we can extract out those multi-word concepts rather than having to build something out on a term-by-term basis or leveraging training sets. Again, we'll show how we build out the rules in just a moment, but when we're building out the rules, because we're having the ability to extract out the multi-word concepts, we know that the content itself is much more valuable and, more importantly, has much more semantic meaning because it's a multi-word concept and not just a single word. Again, we'll show how we build out the rules, the way it works out of the box when we create a new rule or a new term. That score is set to 50. Anything that scores above 50 and above will get classified about the topic. Anything below it will not. And everything that you're going to see is set up to make it easier for the person who's going to build out taxonomies or term sets and accelerate not only building out the term set, but also the entire classification process. The taxonomy tools are very powerful that allow you to do check-in and check-out on a branch or term basis. And again, the whole goal here being that when we upload a document, rather than hope that an end user selects all these values, we're going to automate that entire process for them. And when we upload the document, not only can we apply the metadata, but we can apply the content type and take action by moving the document either into or out of SharePoint, as well as migrate to other repositories like SQL, Oracle, or even Documentum. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and try and share the demo. And Steve, can you let me know, can we see everything? Can we see the SharePoint document library?
Yep, seeing it. Perfect, thanks.
Excellent. So what I've done here is I'm going to go ahead and upload a document. Now we're going to slow down. I know we went really fast there, but I always try and get through the PowerPoint as quickly as possible. And so what I'm doing is uploading a standard document. Now this could be SharePoint 2010, this could be SharePoint 2013, could be Office 365. What we're showing is the typical process that an end user would have to do. They would upload the document, and as we all know, when we upload the document, they would then have to select the appropriate metadata values and content type for the document that they're working with. What we see here is that we have read the document, we've extracted out the appropriate metadata values, and as an end user, all I have to do is literally click the Save button, and those metadata values are automatically applied to the document that we're working with. We've removed the behavior modification process. Because it's consistent, we know it can be transparent. Because it's transparent, we can align it with our governance policies, sensitive information removal policies, e-discovery audits, or literally any process that we need to align it with across our company. Now that was the single document upload. Let's try the same process, but this time let's do multiple documents. And this time we're going to grab some PDFs. We're going to grab a number of documents, a couple web pages, and this time when we do the upload, what we'll see is that not only are we going to read the documents and apply the metadata, and so you can see we've already started the process and we're already applying the metadata, but we're also going to take action. And so what I'm expecting to happen is that we'll actually move a document or two from our original location to a new location. And so we'll come back to that in just a moment, and we'll see that action take place. In the meantime, I'm actually going to go to our 2013 session, and we'll just show it happening in 2013. Again, it's the same process. We're going to read a document, and then from that document, we're going to go ahead and upload the metadata. And it's just going to be the same process. And again, rather than the cross our fingers and hope approach, we are going to automate it. And again, because we're automating it, that means it'll be consistent. If it's consistent, we can leverage transparency, which means we can align it with governance, sensitive information removal, and really any other policy that we want. It also can be used to leverage for targeting purposes. So when metadata gets applied to the content, we can use the content targeting features within SharePoint to say, you know what, we want to target this type of content to a specific user group. So whether it's engineers, whether it's accountants, whether it's marketing, by just auto-applying the tag and having different rules set up for those tags, we can target the content to the appropriate users. Now here, I've went ahead and clicked Save. And again, rather than having to read through that document, without doing anything, we've automatically applied the metadata. And on both this scenario and the other scenario, you saw that we had approximately 4 or 5 term sets that we were exposing, but we're actually only displaying one here in the SharePoint user interface itself. The metadata is actually there. We're just choosing which term sets that we actually want to expose to the end user. And again, rather than cross our fingers and hope, we're actually automating that entire process for them. So again, we see here that we've applied the metadata to a number of these documents. And we can see that we've moved a couple of the documents to the for official use only folder. And that's because they had specific metadata that when we read through the document, we realized that this type of topic or this specific document type should actually be used for official use only. So rather than cross our fingers and hope that the end user applies that metadata, we've automated the process for them. Now, everything that we do is has been exposed so far as how the end user would work with the system. And if I go here, you see the search UI, and this is a multi-value pick list, so I could select any of these values. This is, again, the last piece of the business user interface that we want to expose. Again, I can pick any one of these values or multiple values and run my query. What we want to show, though, is that we have this native integration into the term store, this being the term store right here. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is create a new term. And when I create that new term, that term gets automatically added into the term store. That just timed out. I just have to do a quick F5. And again, what we'll see is when we add this new term, not only will we add this term here, but it will automatically add into our tool. We're setting it up as a retention code. And so when I add that into the term store, we should see that when I do a little update here, that will also get updated immediately. So this is actually showing our tool. An end user would never actually use this. This would be the person who's responsible for building out the term sets and aligning with our governance policies. And the next thing is if I add it here, it automatically will get added to the term store by clicking the F5 button. You can see that it's here now. And more importantly, it's going to be here in our search box, which I had to get to the right place. We'll just do a quick F5. And again, we'll see that those values have been made available. Now, everybody says, well, how do you do this? Well, long story short, we have a tool that allows us to look at the content, understand the content that we're working with, and then apply the metadata based on scoring of the content. So we can see here, we have these different values. What you can see is that when I click on these values, I can actually see how many documents I have about each topic. So when I have a starter term set, I can literally click on this reclassify node button, and it will tell me how many documents I have for each topic. Sometimes I have a lot of content, sometimes I don't have enough. The first number represents how many have been classified about the topic. The second number is the branch itself. Here we can see those 14 documents. And all of these tabs up on the top, as well as these gray icons here in the UI, are set up to make it very easy for the end user to understand the content, and then, of course, to accelerate the process of building out a taxonomy or term set. So let's create a new one on the fly, a new taxonomy. And we're just going to call this new 123. Now, there's no such thing as an auto-generating taxonomy tool. But what I am going to show is that we can accelerate that entire process. And so I'll add 2 new terms. And what I'm going to do is ask the system to find me the statistically relevant concepts that are aligned with health. Remember, this is that multi-word concept index, the triple heart bypass. And so rather than cross our fingers and hope that these are the appropriate values, we know that these are the right values. And that's because we went and looked at all of your content, whether it's in your file shares, whether it's in your databases, whether it's in your web pages, we don't care. But what we're going to do is expose it. And then the person who's responsible for building out your term sets quickly goes in here, accepts the nodes that are relevant, and doesn't use the ones that are gibberish. And again, the gibberish ones are the reason that there's no such thing as a tool that auto-accelerates building out a taxonomy. But as you can see here, I have quickly built out values that are all relevant to health. I can do the same thing with water, but this time I'm going to skip it just because of the time perspective. But once I think I have the appropriate values, all I do is click on the reclassify node. When I do that, what I then get back are these results here. And these results tell me, again, how many documents I have classified about each topic. If I have a topic that has 0, I might need to add additional clues. So let's go through the whole clue building process now very quickly. And so what I will do, let's just delete this one and show how this whole process works. So we'll add the new child. And so again, when I add this new term, the problem is how do I find out all of these values that are associated with the term coal mining? Again, the same process, because we've actually indexed all of the content that you're working with, we know what are the appropriate values. And so we can just select the ones that we want to work with or we think that are most relevant, the multi-word concepts as well as the single word. And the last little thing that we want to highlight here right now is not only can we allow you to quickly build out the rules that we're going to work with, but you can test the rules. So here I'm going to click on the term shaft. And when I click on the term shaft, and then I click on show document movements, it'll actually show me the score of the documents that we're working with. So you can see right now this document has a score of 15. The fourth and fifth one are also not getting classified. But we know that whenever we're talking about the topic shaft, that we're actually talking about coal mining because it's our corpus of content. So literally, all I have to do is go back in, change the score from 10 to 50, click update. And when I do that, not only do I classify all the documents that weren't getting classified because the score of the documents have went below 50 to above 50. You can see that with the first, the fourth, and the fifth. And then the last thing that we want to show here is that besides doing it with strings and multi-word concepts, you can actually support a plethora of different types of clues. And the last one that I want to show here that's extremely powerful is the metadata clue. Because when we build the multi-word concept index, it's not only that we work with the content, but we also work with the metadata. And so if I wanted to classify the content, but I only want to classify it about coal mining, if Don Miller was the author, here I was able to expose all of the current metadata values, click on mandatory tag, and when I do that, that means I'm no longer going to be classifying based on just these initial rules. Now Don Miller has to be the author. And again, if I go back and do a test of my shaft term, what we should see is that that document, which was getting classified, is no longer getting classified. As I mentioned, all of these tabs here are to accelerate the building out of the taxonomy, which we just showed, as well as the classification of the content itself. And we have a bunch of other values down here in the UI such as calculations to show how a document is currently getting scored. Again, all of this is so that we can build the Smart Content Metadata framework. Once we know that we have the content aligned how we want it to align, we simply go ahead and align this term set with the term set inside of SharePoint that we're working with, and literally turn it on. And once we've done that, then we get what we just shown here, is that by uploading the documents, content is automatically moved to the appropriate locations, metadata is automatically applied, and again, if we have to align it with governance or sensitive information removal, or even something like legal hold for e-discovery, we've automated that entire process so that we don't have to worry about behavior modifications or whether somebody understands how to subjectively tag. With this solution, we automate that entire process for you. With that said, that is about everything that I wanted to go through today, Steve. I know this is actually quick, but like I said, we will be presenting at the SharePoint conference in June. I'm very excited to present our solution to your team, as well as to show how to build out best practices around taxonomy design and content types. But with that said, that's everything that I have for right now, Steve, and I'd like to go ahead and open it up to QA if we happen to have a question or two.
Great, thanks, Dawn. Yeah, we have a bunch of questions. The first one is, and I know we mentioned this at the beginning, you showed us the 2010 version in 2013. What about Office 365? I think you mentioned that this would work in Office 365.
Yep, that's a great question. And of course, from a roadmap perspective, that has to be something that we support. We're actually a TAP program partner, and so that means from a Microsoft perspective, when Microsoft released the 2013 platform and Office 365, we actually released our product to support both of those scenarios at the same time, and that is because we are such a strategic partner of Microsoft. So the answer is yes to both.
And it's all the same functionality you showed here, just in Office 365 and SharePoint Online.
Correct.
Excellent. Next question, which I think is a good one, and it's a two-part question. The first is, you walk through uploading documents, but does the same practice apply to if you're creating, say, web pages within SharePoint? So you go to Site Actions, new page, create the page. Does it kick off the auto classification?
Yep. So we did upload a web page here, the 20 Mutual Fund Basics web page. Really, what I try and explain to people is anything that needs to be tagged, rather than have the end user subjectively tag it and do your cross your fingers and hope on the behavior modification, our solution will automate that process. If it's within SharePoint, we're going to leverage our native integration. If it's outside of SharePoint, we're going to leverage our web service XML API, which again is very analogous to how we're implemented with IDC Research, with their XML content platform and Solar search platform.
Great. And then that question is actually, that you touched on the answer a little bit, is non-SharePoint content like Confluence wiki sites. Is that something you can get?
Again, with anything that's outside of SharePoint, we're leveraging our web service and XML API, and it just depends on the particular solution and how we need to hook in. If it's a search platform, it's a slightly different approach than if it's an enterprise application. But either way, what we're doing is applying consistent metadata to an object. And if you just think of it that way, really all we're doing is taking that manual process out of the loop and automating it consistently, transparently, and aligned with governance.
Okay, great. Let's see if there's any additional questions. Give it a second. Okay.
I would like to throw in there, again, we will be going over a bunch of best practices around taxonomy design for term sets at the SharePoint conference. Definitely, please bring your content type questions. We'll go over those as well, and really looking forward to presenting that session around best practices for term set and content type design for SharePoint 2010 and 2013.
Yep, there's one other question. I was just rereading it. So, do you plan to incorporate semantic triples at any point? And the question says taxonomies only go so far.
Really, taxonomy doesn't, if you actually know how to use it properly. And so what we've done is not only build out what we call taxonomy, thesaurus, and really ecology best practices into the solution. And so we will typically export the taxonomy as a triples for consumption by other platforms as needed in OWL format. But it really depends. And then generally speaking, you run into trouble when you go into triples because SharePoint really doesn't support that natively out of the box. So if you're outside of SharePoint, I'm going to say it's something that's very doable. If you're inside of SharePoint, SharePoint doesn't really support that. And since we have this beautiful native integration, we tend to not focus on that too much. And really, if you know how to design your taxonomies correctly, you don't need that. But a lot of people don't know how to design the taxonomies correctly and build very convoluted structures.
Gotcha. Two additional questions. One is, I think I know the answer, but does it also work when uploading in Explorer View? If you use Explorer View to put your documents into SharePoint.
Yes, it does.
And somebody had arrived late, and they were asking what the name of the official name of the tools are that you showed.
Concept classifier for SharePoint.
Excellent.
Is what we showed today. Concept classifier for SharePoint is the official product name. Taxonomy Manager is actually the product inside there that does the rules building, but the actual solution is called Concept Classifier for SharePoint. Available for today for 2007, 2010, and 2013, as well as Office 365.
Great. And with that, Don, I think that was our last question. I want to thank you today for walking us through this. It was great. I think there's a lot to think about. And as Don mentioned, he will be at our SharePoint conference coming up in June, presenting for probably an hour and 15 minutes, getting more in depth about taxonomies and metadata. And if anybody joined late, looks like there was a couple people who joined late, asked some questions. Yes, this is being recorded. It'll be available on our website within the next 24 hours. And with that, that will conclude today's 30 on Thursday. Again, 2 weeks from today, we'll be talking about the new geolocation features in SharePoint 2013. Hope to see you then. Thanks again, Don.
Thanks, Steve. Have a great day, everyone.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected.